Alcoholism. History of alcohol. Dating back to 7000 BC, fermented beverages are being made in China. Greek literature from thousands of years ago talks about the dangers of abusing alcohol. Due to the extreme consumption of alcohol in the 1900s, which caused for the push of prohibition. During the 1920s, alcohol was prohibited. This was thought to resolve the problems of alcoholism, but it only made it worse. Like most illegal substances, alcohol was still being sold and produced through underground speakeasies. This prohibition only increased alcohol intake and led to alcohol poisoning because the alcohol being passed around was not being properly made in distilleries. It was often spiked with chemicals to give it an extra punch. Doctors began prescribing prescriptions for whiskey, meaning that 1 million gallons of alcohol was consumed from prescriptions alone. By 1933, the prohibition was canceled. What is alcoholism? Alcoholism is the addiction to the consumption of alcohol while being physically and emotionally tied to this drug. Alcoholism consists of the inability to stop using, drinking alone or in secret, not being able to control your alcohol intake, needing more alcohol in order to feel its effect, the dependency on the drink, experiencing withdrawal symptoms like nausea, sweating, shaking when not drinking. The causes of alcoholism include stress. This may run in the family, drinking at an early age, mental health problems like depression and anxiety, peer pressure, and social factors like drinking with friends, as well as culture could impact this. Scope of alcoholism from society at large. Views differ across the world depending on society and culture. You would think that America would have the highest drinking rate consumption, but according to the chart Burley's does, America has such a low consumption rate that it doesn't even qualify for the chart. For countries with higher alcohol consumption rate, it is viewed as normal to be an alcoholic, and a matter of fact, they wouldn't consider someone an alcoholic because everyone drinks there. In America, since we have such a low alcohol consumption rate, it is much easier to be considered an alcoholic due to the drinking standards here. In America, many support drinking if it's responsible. On the other hand, many feel that alcohol consumption is dangerous. They believe that drinking contributes to too much injuries and death. Some believe that drinking should be prohibited due to the death rates and injuries associated with it. My experience with alcoholism. My dad is an alcoholic and has been ever since he met my mom. My parents divorced when I was 5, and I lived with my mom since then. She told me stories of how he would abuse her and our animals because he was drunk. I didn't believe it until I was older. When I decided to move back in with my dad, I thought it was normal for him to drink beers every night alone in the basement. Then I realized that those beers turned into shots and he got more and more aggressive. He pushed me away, pushed his girlfriend away, and pushed his family away. That's when I realized he was an alcoholic. I was depressed because of this and extremely embarrassed. I further distanced myself from him and decided to move back into my mom's. It made me realize a lot of people deal with alcoholism, but nobody talks about it. It also made me realize how hard it was to trust someone that was an alcoholic. And you can't change them, they have to want to change. Living with my dad, who was an alcoholic, made me realize that in our country we focus more on people who are addicted to hard drugs like opioids, but never focus on alcohol, the drug that is allowed to be on the shelves and freely purchased. It made me more cautious of how many drinks I had, how many my family was having. Living with an alcoholic made me rethink college parties. I decided I wanted to live at home, therefore I wouldn't have to be involved with alcohol. I became afraid that I would become an alcoholic since it runs in my family. Deviance. What is deviance? An action or behavior that violates social norm, usually seen as disapproving in the eyes of society. How is alcoholism deviant behavior? Since alcoholism is already a disease, it is already considered deviant behavior. Deviance is often associated with risk-taking behavior. With the use of alcohol, you are taking many risks, such as liver failure, death, heart problems, injuries, and blackouts. Alcohol is already seen as deviant behavior, but it takes in other deviant behaviors with it, like lying, withdrawal from activities, and abuse to yourself as well as others. Views from an interactionalist. Interactionalists believe that we learn specific behavior and social norms from the groups that we hang out with. If we hang out with people who drink a lot, we begin to adapt those behaviors. Likewise, if we hang out with groups that do not drink, we tend to not drink as well. Interactionalist perspective views the drinking patterns with different communities. Interactionalists realize that not all communities have drinking problems, but acknowledge that different communities handle alcohol much differently. This could be because of the demography and the geography of that area, which could explain higher rates of alcohol-related problems such as deaths and health risks. More rural communities have a higher drinking rate because of the geography and the demographics, where urban areas like city have lower alcohol-related problems because there is more to do instead of drinking all day. This perspective also discusses how groups as well as individuals are labeled as abusers and addresses how society interacts with them once they are labeled as an abuser. Once labeled as this, society negatively responds to those individuals or groups and applies stereotypes to these groups, such as calling them weak or pathetic. Views from a conflict theorist. Conflict theorists realize that much of drug and alcohol abuse happens in lower income communities. Due to the high stress in these communities, they turn to drugs, specifically to alcohol, due to their cheapness, in order to help them cope. Conflict theorists even look at why these low-income communities sell drugs or alcohol and found that they do this to make money for their families. These theorists look at how race and ethnic issues influence alcohol abuse and addiction. Due to the racial inequalities and living conditions, many minority groups turn to alcohol to help them manage stress, which could be influenced by their culture and could be practiced in their ethnic groups. Conflict theorists emphasizes the huge influence that multinational corporations have in their marketing and sales. The companies sell legal drugs like These companies sell legal drugs like alcohol, and conflict theorists view how and why these companies sell alcohol legally. They believe it is because they need to maximize their profits. By doing this, they convince groups how fun and carefree alcohol is through their commercials and advertisements. Views from a functionalist. Functionalists argue that society provides us with norms and guidelines on the use of alcohol. Alcohol is seen as a functionalist. It is good for your health in moderation. It is consumed with meals and often associated with celebrations. But they state that there are guidelines that follow with drinking, such as only drinking a few drinks once in a while and not becoming an alcoholic. Functionalists look at the need for social stability. In some cultures, in order for them to be stable, they need drugs or alcohol to cope and function as they normally would. Drug use is functional because it provides them with the various positive psychological effects that drugs have, like the money that comes with it, or the coping mechanisms that are affected from drinking, or the numbing or euphoric feeling. It also is functional for those companies that sell alcohol because they make such a large profit out of it. This also helps provide jobs in many communities. References: